Okay, let's unpack this Target situation. I mean, a retail giant, most of us know, right?
Mhm.
Stock price goes from, what, $142 down to $94 in just a few months.
Yeah, that's a significant drop.
Tells a story, doesn't it? And it's just one of the really compelling narratives we're looking at today, all coming from the Observer Group newspapers of Southern California.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is how these, seemingly local stories, they really tap into much bigger trends, broader challenges.
Right, they're not just isolated things happening.
No, not at all. They give you a real window into sort of the forces shaping communities right now.
Exactly. So our mission here, for you listening, is to navigate these articles, pull out the key info, connect the dots, really, so you get the bigger picture,
Mm-hmm.
without getting totally bogged down.
Mm-hmm. Saving you some time, hopefully.
Yeah. We'll hit on Target struggles in this worrying situation in Altadena for fire survivors. Also, the SAVE Act and voting rights. That's a big one.
And then shifting gears a bit, that amazing story about the Cal State Dominguez Hills women's basketball team.
Oh, yeah. Inspiring stuff. And finally, Barbara Lee's significant win in the Oakland mayor's race.
And you can see, just listing them, how they touch on so many different aspects of life, right? Consumer power, housing, democracy itself, community spirit.
Definitely. It hits on things that matter. So let's dive into Target first. They really do seem to be in a bit of a bind. You've got these organized boycotts happening.
Right, consumer pressure.
Plus, rumblings from employees maybe pushing for unionization, and it's all hitting their finances, apparently linked back to some decisions they made around DEI.
DEI, yeah, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those corporate initiatives.
And this whole Target situation, it's kind of a textbook case, isn't it? How corporate stances on social issues aren't just internal memos anymore.
Not at all. They hit the bottom line. They can spark these really powerful, organized responses from consumers. And those are hard to just, ride out.
And we're not just talking a handful of people upset. You had Reverend Jamal Bryant organizing that Target fast during Lent.
Right, a deliberate call to shift spending.
And big groups like the NAACP, the National Newspaper Publishers Association, they're backing these boycotts too.
And the organizers are very direct about why. They're linking Target, pulling back on DEI to broader issues of fairness, corporate responsibility.
Like Reverend Bryant talking about abandoning progress.
Exactly. And John Schwartz from People's Union USA talking about shifting economic power. It's quite explicit.
Plus the online side, that We Are Somebody group, Nina Turner,
Yeah.
talking about how effective boycotts can be historically.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like it's not over. There's another Target boycott planned for June, right?
Yeah.
Part of a bigger push, maybe targeting Walmart, Amazon.
Yeah, McDonald's too, I think. It suggests a sustained effort, not just a one-off protest. A broader strategy, maybe, to influence corporate behavior across the board.
And the numbers, well, they kind of speak for themselves. 10 straight weeks of falling store traffic.
Which is huge.
Yeah. February foot traffic dropped 9% overall. Then another dip in March.
Yeah.
Operating income down 21%. And that's stock price drop we started with.
These aren't small fluctuations. It's a real economic hit. You see their CFO, Jim Lee, talking about an uncertain outlook, focusing on controlling what we can control.
Which kind of sounds like acknowledging things are tough.
It certainly indicates they recognize the challenge.
Okay, so that's the external pressure. But then internally, it sounds like things aren't great either. Reports of people resigning,
Mass resignations.
frustration over pay. Wasn't there an example of like a 28-cent raise?
Ouch. Yeah, that kind of thing really stings. And definitely more talk about unionizing. It paints a picture of a workforce feeling pretty undervalued.
And you see it online, right?
Yeah.
Employees posting on Reddit, low morale,
Yeah.
feeling like management isn't really getting it.
Yeah, that analogy one employee used was pretty vivid, calling HR efforts a bluey Band-Aid on a severed limb.
Wow. Okay. That says a lot.
It really highlights the disconnect and that feeling that things like Bullseye Bucks, their incentive program, are kind of meaningless.
Right. Doesn't feel genuine, maybe.
Right.
It really shows you the whole tangled web consumer power, employee satisfaction, corporate decisions.
Mm.
It's all linked.
Indeed. Okay, switching gears now, quite dramatically actually. This situation in Altadena. After the fires, it brings up this concept, Naomi Klein's shock doctrine.
Right. That idea that crises create openings for, well, exploitation sometimes.
Exactly. Where big disruptions like a natural disaster create opportunities for corporations or, wealthy interests to push agendas that benefit them, often at the expense of the community that's suffering.
And this story is, wow, you have people who've lost everything trying to rebuild, and suddenly there's this new threat, luxury developers moving in, potentially pricing them out.
It's a really stark example of how vulnerability can be exploited.
And how fast it happened. A vacant lot selling for $100,000 over asking just a month after the fire.
Yeah, that speed is a real red flag. It signals this rush where profit might be overshadowing the needs of people trying to recover.
And it wasn't just one property. The report mentioned 14 sold, half to developers, all cash offers.
And many buyers from outside the U.S., apparently, which raises questions about local ties, about the community fabric being potentially disrupted by outside investment, just looking for opportunity.
It fits that shock doctrine pattern, doesn't it? The chaos and need after a crisis kind of paves the way for changes that might face pushback normally.
It really does seem to align. Thankfully, Governor Newsom did step in with an executive order, trying to offer some protection for homeowners.
Yeah, some safeguards. And that warning from Areva Martin, the civil rights attorney, urging people to be careful.
Yeah.
Very necessary advice, it sounds like.
It sets up this really difficult contrast, the community working so hard to rebuild, and then these big economic forces looming that could just push them aside.
Makes you think who really benefits when disaster strikes
Yeah.
and who gets left behind.
Exactly. And beyond just Altadena, what does this tell us about the risks for any vulnerable community after a crisis? What broader safeguards might be needed?
It's a sobering thought, how quickly things can change, especially when people are down. Okay, let's move to the ASAVI Act. Big implications here for democracy, for voting rights.
Yeah, this is significant, and the reporting puts it in context, right? As part of ongoing efforts, particularly over the last few decades, to make voting more restrictive.
So the ASAVI Act, Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. What's the core of it? What would it actually change?
The main thing is it would require in-person documentary proof of U.S. citizenship to register to vote.
In person.
In person, which essentially kills online registration, mail-in registration, and really hampers voter registration drives. You'd need specific documents, birth certificate, passport, naturalization papers.
Wow, okay, that sounds like a massive hurdle for a lot of eligible voters. And this actually passed the House.
It did, 220 to 208. Interestingly, 4 Democrats crossed the aisle to vote for it as well.
That's notable.
It is. And when you layer on past comments from some political figures about, well, their supporters maybe not needing to vote again, it raises concerns.
For sure. Voting rights experts sound seriously alarmed. They're talking potentially millions of eligible voters disenfranchised, especially women, people of color.
Yes, the potential impact is huge. You heard strong words from the ACLU, Molly McGrath calling it dangerous and unnecessary, and Janai Nelson from the Legal Defense Fund framing it as a discriminatory barrier based on fear of a multiracial electorate.
And it's important to state, right, it's already illegal for non-citizens to vote.
Absolutely. There are penalties. So this isn't really addressing some proven widespread problem of non-citizens voting. It's creating barriers for people who are eligible citizens.
The ACLU compared it to that Kansas law that got struck down, the one that purged like 30,000 voters.
Exactly. Highlighting the potential for similar outcomes here.
And the reporting breaks down who gets hit hardest. Lower-income folks, rural residents, Black Americans, naturalized citizens.
And voters without driver's licenses yet.
Right. And, this was striking, nearly 70 million women whose names on documents might not match perfectly because of marriage or other changes.
The stats on who actually has a passport or even a driver's license, especially among, say, younger Black Americans, really drive home that disproportionate impact.
And think about voter registration drives. They rely on being able to register people easily, on the spot sometimes.
Yeah.
This would make that incredibly difficult.
Undeniably. Representative Joe Morell, ranking member on the House Administration Committee, he really denounced it, pointing specifically to the impact on women, military members, people of color.
So a really stark reminder about the fight for voting access. What happens in the Senate, though? Is it likely to pass there?
That's much less certain. There's a companion bill, but in the Senate, you generally need 60 votes to overcome a filibuster, so its future is definitely unclear. But passing the House is still a major step.
Definitely something to watch. It raises big questions about where voting rights are headed in the U.S. Okay, let's shift to something much more positive. That Cal State Dominguez Hills women's basketball team, Coach John Bonner. What a season.
Oh, it's an incredible story, isn't it? 36-2. making it all the way to the Division II national championship game. That's just historic for them.
Absolutely. And Coach Bonner's journey itself is pretty cool. From Bakersfield, playing sports, coaching at different levels, and then leading this team to the national stage.
His philosophy seems key, too. It's not just about the X's and O's. He talks about energy, effort, respect, character, and this phrase, cultural grace.
Cultural grace. I like that. It sounds like a really holistic approach.
And it clearly worked. You look at Nella Williams, the senior guard, D2 National Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year. That's amazing.
Wow.
And she described Bonner's style as intense but intentional, focused on rebounding, defense, teamwork. You can hear his influence right there.
And the forward, Asia Jordan,
Mhm.
MVP too. She credited the success to everyone buying into his system, his dedication to studying the game.
Yeah, it sounds like he really built a strong team culture, a culture of belief, of hard work.
And even though they didn't win the final championship game,
Right, they fell just short.
they still put Cal State Dominguez Hills, on the map, as the article said. That's a huge achievement.
Absolutely. And Bonner's comments about supporting his players' individual goals beyond basketball, it shows his focus on their whole development.
It's just a great reminder, isn't it? How strong leadership, teamwork, shared values, how that can lead to amazing things, even if you don't get the ultimate trophy. Really inspiring.
Definitely.
Okay, and finally, let's talk Oakland. Barbara Lee winning the mayoral race. A really significant moment for the city.
Hugely significant, a decisive win in that ranked choice election, getting over 50%. And Oakland's first Black woman mayor. That's history right there.
And her 10-point plan she put out during the campaign obviously connected with voters.
It seems so. And her acceptance statement, acknowledging the challenges, the divisions, but also talking about responsibility, humility, and love. That sets an important tone, I think.
Yeah. And Lauren Manuel Taylor conceding, even though it looks like it was fairly close in the end,
Yeah.
maybe that signals a hope for unity.
Possibly. The endorsement from the Oakland Post was interesting, too, and Paul Cobb's comments.
Right, the publisher.
Yeah. Saying Lee brings back respect and accountability, praising her consensus-building style. That speaks to what people might be looking for in Oakland right now. And he mentioned her willingness to work with the county on issues like homelessness.
Her own background is just incredible, really. Experiencing homelessness herself, single mother, relying on public assistance early on, then activism, working for Ron Dellums, decades in Congress.
She brings a lifetime of experience, both personal and political, to the role. A deep understanding of the community's challenges, you have to imagine.
Absolutely. And even though that Senate run didn't pan out last year,
Right.
this win puts her alongside Karen Bass in L.A., London Breed in SF, a notable moment for Black women in leadership in California.
It certainly is. And her focus for the first 100 days, public safety, homelessness, the economy, those are the big pressing issues for Oakland.
Yeah, the rise in homelessness there has been significant. It's a major challenge.
Paul Cobb had another interesting phrase, calling her the cleanup woman.
Okay.
Yeah, suggesting this needed to kind of repair things, tackle bureaucracy, restore confidence. And her plan seems pretty practical, focusing the council on a sound budget, better police business links, dealing with vegetation for fire safety.
Actionable steps. It sounds like she understands the immediate concerns people have: safety, the city's finances, just making things work better.
Exactly. And her final words about building a safer, more vibrant Oakland, it captures that sense of hope, that potential her election represents.
It'll definitely be interesting to follow how she tackles those challenges. A complex job in a complex city.
For sure. It really highlights the pressures on mayors today, but also the potential for experienced leadership to make a difference.
So wrapping up this deep dive, looking back at all these stories from the Observer Group, some clear themes emerge, don't they?
Definitely. You see the power of people organizing, whether it's consumers with boycotts or workers pushing for change at Target.
Yeah, collective action, and then the vulnerability of communities like in Altadena facing crises and the need for protection against exploitation.
And the ongoing struggle over voting rights, access to democracy, highlighted by the SAVE Act debate, that's clearly not going away.
No, but then you also have these really uplifting stories like the Toros basketball team showing what leadership and teamwork can achieve.
And significant political shifts, like Barbara Lee's historic win in Oakland, changes in local leadership.
So when you put it all together, these different snapshots from Southern California,
Yeah.
it makes you think. Here's a final thought for you listening. Considering these diverse challenges and triumphs, the consumer power, the community threats, the political fights, the moments of inspiration, what does it all tell you about where communities are headed? about the power dynamics in the region and maybe even beyond.
Right. But with all these forces in play, activism, politics, resilience, what role do you see yourself having in these unfolding stories? Something to chew on.